Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 9 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. Tonight, we get ready to cross the halfway point of 2023 Season 1, which is a bit of a crazy thing to think about. It's already halfway through this season, and it still feels like we're just getting started. Now, tonight we are up further north than we have been pretty much all season to one of the tracks that has a little bit of a special place in I think everyone's hearts here in Attrition Sim Race Campus because we are currently up at the Thompson Speedway up in Thompson, Connecticut, and this is one of the tracks that, much like the USA International Speedway before it, we have been to quite literally every single season since this series' inception back at the very end of 2020. Season 1, Harry Grindell took the win here in the street stock, followed by Connor Wagner, Jason Gardner, and Travis Sukup for the year of the street stock. Then, when we switch things up to the modifieds, Season 5, Brad Winger and Benjamin Harst got wins here in Season 6. And then, when we swap to the late model, both for Season 7 and for Season 8, Brian Sabelski took home back to back wins here at this speedway. So now, as it always tends to do here with oval racing, it all comes full circle. We are back to the Thompson Speedway in the street stock for the first time in a little over a year for Attrition Sim Race Campus, so definitely will be interesting to see what of these drivers retained of their skills from over a year ago. Unfortunately, Jason Gardner having some technical difficulties, so he will not be able to come out here tonight and try and take home another win at this track, but Travis Sukup and Brian Sabelski are both present out on the speedway, and Travis Sukup currently is leading the point standings here tonight with 4 wins under his belt. So definitely a very impressive run by him, and he's going to be looking to try and get win number 5 in a row here tonight. And of course, Brian Sabelski, 4-time champion here with the ASRC Oval Series, so another driver that we will definitely have to be keeping an eye on to see just what he manages to pull out here at the Thompson Speedway. That said, looks like drivers are making their way down onto the speedway, qualifying in the books. So let's take a look down there and see what our starting lineup is here tonight. Starting out on the pole here tonight in the 145, the driver that has gotten 4 wins in a row. That's Mr. Travis Sukup for Dropping Bombs Racing. To his outside, going to be the 11, his teammate for Dropping Bombs Racing. That's Tyler McRae in the Sim Speed Shop, number 11. Back in position number 3, the driver out of Channahon, Illinois. That is the 10 of Steven Rex, the final Dropping Bombs Racing entry here tonight, making up the top 3. To his outside, that's going to be the number 85 of Brian Sabelski, rounding out row number 2. Back in P number 5, that's the 007 of Nico Morelli, with Corey Logan in the 24, rounding out row number 3. And finally, back in row 4 here tonight, that's going to be the 8 of Jeremy Malrow, making his first start with the ASRC Oval Series since 2022 Season 2, and his first start with the his second start with the ASRC Oval Series as a whole. And then finally, rounding out the field here tonight, going to be the 38 of Brandon Feeney. It does not look like Feeney has made the call to the speedway. And now that these cars are rolling, it is pretty much too late for him to get involved in this race. So it does look like we will be having a 7-car field here tonight, but still, we have seen these drivers put on some amazing shows with just 4, so 7 is a pretty decent number, especially for one of these somewhat larger tracks. Thompson Speedway comes in at 0.62 miles, or exactly 1 kilometer in length, so one of the larger short tracks that we've been to this season, but not necessarily the biggest. And it's a track that draws a lot of controversy both in the league and on the iRacing.com platform as a whole. This is a track with a very weird, uncomfortable racing line that is generally known to throw even the best drivers off of their rhythm. So, 100 laps is the distance. As always, fuel most likely going to be playing into these drivers' strategies. iRacing.com pace truck is off though. Let's see just what these drivers have to do here tonight. Green flag up in the air. A little bit of scrape against the outside wall for Tyler McRae on that initial start. Side by side down into turns 1 and 2, and McRae has the advantage. He is our new race leader just like that. And throughout the field, it looks like everyone, for the most part, single filing themselves out. Jeremy Morrow down low on the speedway, getting very loose on the apron. He's going to fall back a couple of positions all the way back to P number 6. And Corey Logan hot on his tail in that Maltesers 24. So a little bit of trauma right out the gate, but now it looks like everyone, for the most part, is getting themselves sorted out here this evening. Everyone going nice in single file. A decently long race ahead of them still. And currently, the closest battle on the speedway is between our two race leaders, but trouble. 2 cars around, caution flag not going to come out. That's Corey Logan and Jeremy Mauro around. Corey Logan got it rolling again, and so does Mauro, but that's going to throw both these drivers off their game. And yeah, it's looking like no yellow, so let's take a look back and see if we can't see what happened to these drivers real quick. Heading down into turns number 1 and 2. Mauro in that number 8 car is who you need to be looking at. Says it isn't too hot, gets just a little bit loose, and nowhere Logan could really go. That's damage to both of these cars, and both of them came to a complete stop, but no yellow flag, so a rough start to the evening for both these drivers, but it does look like they're both still rolling. Jeremy Mauro, he's got his car rolling, a little bit of damage on the side of that car, and Corey Logan, little bit of damage to their left front, but nothing too race ending in that 24. That said, 10 and 16 seconds back respectively. That is a whole lot of work that these two drivers are going to have to do to catch back up to the rest of the field. Further on up though, this is the battle for the 4th position between the 85 of Brian Sabelski and the 007 of Nico Morelli. Side by side out of turn number 2, down the back straight, heading into turns 3 and 4, and looks like Morelli going to lift just a little bit and let Sabelski get up in there. Only 8 laps through, probably thinking to try and keep from pushing the car too hard this early on. The last thing these drivers need is to be getting into an incident when they have plenty of race left ahead of them to get things sorted out with. Just in front of them, another battle going on. This is for the 2nd position between Sukup and Rex, teammates for the Drop and Bomb Racing team. And it looks like Mauro has just retired from the race just like that. Let's see if we can't take a look back and see what happened to the driver of that number 8 car, because he just pulled it on down to pit lane and called it an evening. And it looks like a little bit of a repeat of what happened to him and Corey Logan earlier on in the race. Just spun it around and he said, you know what, I'm not feeling it tonight. He's going to be retiring from the race, and that's going to be leaving us with 6 cars still out on the speedway here tonight. Tyler McRae, still your race leader in that number 11 Sim Speed Shop entry. That said, don't get his vibrant paint scheme confused. He is still very much a member of the Drop and Bombs Racing team, which are currently making up the entire podium of this race. These 3 drivers have been incredibly dominant all season, and they all were putting on some very solid runs back in the late model, back in season number 7 and 8 as well. But when we switched to the street stock this season for season 9, these drivers have been really showing their colors. They have been in the lead of pretty much every single race. Currently coming into tonight's event, Sukup has 4 wins under his belt. McRae has 1. And I believe Sabelski has the other one, if I'm not mistaken. Never mind, I just don't know how to do math. McRae and Sukup do have all of the wins so far this season. And they're pretty close to each other in the championship standings, especially as these drop weeks get calculated in. There's only about 10 points separating these two drivers, so a win in McRae's book here tonight could be a very good thing for him and potentially even put him back up in the lead of the championship standings. That will remain to be seen as we head into next week's event, though. But halfway point here in the season, this is where the pressure starts to get on some of these drivers to start getting things done if they haven't already. The clock is ticking to get those last couple of race titles under your belt and get yourself crowned as the season number 9 champion. Of course, Brian Sabelski also been working his tail off to try and take home championship number 5 here this season, but currently he is being scored back into what looks like the 5th position in the championship standing, so a bit of work Sabelski still has to do if he wants to get up there, but we have seen drivers come back from worse odds. That said, currently Sabelski about 3 seconds back from our race leader and roughly 2 seconds back from Steven Rex here, who is falling back just a little bit from our race leaders. The gap building up just a bit here tonight. Tyler McRae leading the race, but with a half a second gap, is Sukup falling back a little bit from this race leader here. Crossing the line, getting 20 laps in the books, 80 to go. Fuel definitely going to be a factor for these drivers, and we've seen pit stops play a very deciding role on the outcomes of some of these races, so it is not entirely impossible that we could see this field possibly even completely inverted once it comes time for pit strategy to be in effect. Behind our top 3 drivers currently, Brian Sabelski back in P number 4 in that number 85 machine. Every driver in the field currently being scored back into the positions that they qualified, except for McRae and Sukup, who changed positions at the start-finish line on lap number 1, just getting different runs off the line. Sabelski currently back in the 4th position. He did manage to bring it home 3rd for 2 weeks in a row, back in Myrtle Beach and at 5 Flags. Then there was a little bit of a gap since we had heard from the driver of the number 85 in our post-race show. So definitely good to be seeing him out here, looking to see if he can't get himself back up on the podium or potentially even get his first win of the season. Looking at the lap times, a little bit of damage on the 85 as he scrapes the wall there, but looking at the lap times, it's looking like everyone in the field is almost 2/10 slower than the drivers of the Drop and Bomb Racing team. So definitely a bit of work everyone is going to have to be doing to catch up to those DBR drivers, because they certainly have something under the hoods of their cars that is working very well for them. Back in P number 5 though, rounding out our top 5 here tonight, that is the 007 of Nico Morelli for Attrition Sim Race Campus, running the league's paint scheme on that 007 car. Has not been able to make it out to very many races here this season, but definitely good to see him out here tonight. Looking like Coming into this race, he was being scored back in the 7th position in the championship standings behind Sabelski. So Sabelski and Morelli, two drivers that are technically duking it out for points here this season. So we'll have to see just how these drivers manage to get things to play out for them. That said, Sukup has closed the gap on McRae just like that. Little bit of a love tap earlier between Sukup and McRae, and that caused Sukup to check up, and now Steven Rex has gotten himself back into the mix here in this battle for the lead. Tori Logan also being scored a lap down now. It does look like they ended up getting passed by McRae, so that's going to be bumping them the first driver a lap down, and now Morelli also trying his best to push and keep from getting caught up to by these lead lap cars, but that's going to be quite a difficult feat to do. We did talk to Morelli a little bit coming into before this event, and he did say not the biggest fan of these street stocks. And look at the lap times. Does look like he might be having a little bit of trouble under the hood, that 007, not necessarily running the lap times he wants to be running here tonight. Last time by set a 22.57 for reference. Sabelski set a 21.91, McRae a 21.95, Sukup 21.94. Speaking of McRae and Sukup, though, they are once again duking it out, and Rex has his way up in there too. A three-way battle for the lead, with only about 0.2 of a second separating all three of these drivers. That is not a whole lot of room to maneuver, especially at a tricky track like this one. That said, still for the most part playing nice right now. 34 laps in the books, and Rex scraping the wall a little bit there. But only 34 laps complete. There is still 65 laps left in this race for these drivers to get themselves figured out here tonight. Still looking around the field, it does look like the same status is just about how it is of all of these drivers being in the same positions that they qualified in, except for, of course, McRae and Sukup, who did trade spots on lap 1. So Sukup, he's got his work cut out for him, but he is trying his best to get back up onto the pole where he started and get potentially a 5th win in a row here with the league. He could be looking to try and challenge McRae for tying the record for most wins in a single season here with ASRC. And depending on how it plays out, he also could be trying to get the most wins in a row with ASRC, which would be another pretty impressive feat for this driver to have under his belt. Like I said, the past couple of seasons, both Season 7 and Season 8, wasn't able to get any wins in the late model, but he's been putting on a very dominant run here in the street stock, and he did win at this track one time before, back in Season 4 of the Oval Series, which would have been around November of 2021. He did manage to pick up a win here. So looking to try and make it win number 2 at this speedway, and potentially set himself up to be getting even more in the future. Steven Rex trying to look down there and potentially make a move on that 145. Not going to have the momentum to do it, though. He is going to have to back out of it pretty much at the last possible second. He almost was right there in that number 10. And once again, he's trying to do it, but just not enough momentum on the low line. And looking up there just in front of our leaguers, that is the 24 of Corey Logan. Potentially going to be going another lap down. Logan most likely just going to be moving out of the way of these race leaders, and sure enough, they pull on down to the low line of the speedway, let those 3 cars by, and continue on with their race. And that's going to spread the 3 of them out just a little bit, not too much to make a big difference. Only about a 1/10 of a second got added to each of their gaps. But even just a little bit like that is enough for McRae to get a little bit of pressure off his back and keep on rolling around this speedway. And as we get ready to get 45 laps in the book, we are nearing the halfway point, and that is when things might start to get just a little bit spicy between these drivers. A little bit further back in the field, Sabelski currently a little bit on his own here tonight in that number 85. He is being scored 4 seconds back from the race leader, so 3 seconds back from that whole battle. Losing a little bit of ground on the race leaders, but he's still setting fairly similar lap times to all of them. Roughly, call it about a 1/10 of a second slower last time by than Sukup, Rex, and McRae, and those 3 are all setting virtually identical lap times. But sure enough, that time by, Sabelski set a lap time that was comparable to Sukup and Rex, so only now about a half, or excuse me, call it 5/1000ths of a second between our top 4 drivers in terms of lap time. So that initial speed McRae and Sukup and Rex all had, that looks like it may have been potentially a little bit of shorter run speed, and now as Sabelski comes around the speedway, he may start to make some of that ground back up. That said, these 2 still duking it out like it's the last lap. Does look like they may be a little bit of trouble there. Rex and Sukup touch. Sukup getting incredibly loose, but he manages to hang on to it. But that was very nearly a spin for the 145. But sure enough, our race leaders all catching up to that 007 of Nico Morelli. That is going to be putting him a lap down at the halfway point unless a caution comes out in the next lap or 2. And as Steven Rex and Travis Sukup duke it out, that's entirely possible that might just happen. Sukup going down way, way low, and he is not going to be able to get any momentum off the corner there. And Brian Sabelski going to be the first driver down on pit lane here tonight. He might just see, can I beat the field on my fuel strategy if I'm not able to catch up to them on speed? Sabelski going to be taking at least 2 tires here tonight in that number 85. Will it be 4? Sources say no, just 2 tires and fuel for the 85, and we'll have to see, can he get back out there and potentially get up into the lead, because he is substantially pit earlier than I expected some of these other drivers to be able to. That is going to be bumping him 2 laps down, so that could be a risky play if a caution were to come out. That's going to be a lot of ground he has to make up. But of course, for right now, that is a very big what if. Side by side again into turns 1 and 2, that is Rex and Sukup. Sukup again trying to make the low line work here at the Thompson Speedway, and it does not seem to be working out for him. He is not getting the run off of the corner that he is needing to catch up to his teammate. Now he's changing things up a little bit, going nose to tail with him and setting it down low. Rex goes up high. Sure enough, Sukup is going to be scored back into the second position, and Rex is fallen back big time in that number 10. We may be seeing him come down to pit lane, and sure enough, Steven Rex going to be the next driver to pit here this evening. Gonna have to keep an eye on him and see, will he be following in Sabelski's footsteps, or potentially will we be seeing a 4-tire stop here tonight? Makes it into his pit box without any issue, and it looks like, sure enough, going to be at least 2 tires on that number 10. McRae and Sukup still out on the speedway, so these two certainly having a different strategy under their belts, and as Rex comes back out on the speedway, he is only going to be 1 lap down. So it definitely looks like he spent a pretty considerably shorter time on pit lane than Brian Sabelski did, so a difference of strategy between these two drivers. We'll definitely have to see how it ends up playing out. Now Tyler McRae will be the next driver to head on down to his pit stop, 2 tires for that number 11, which seems to be the general consensus here this evening. And again, a considerably shorter pit stop than that of Brian Sabelski. Like, they're almost double the difference. It looks like McRae and Rex both spent about 13 seconds in their pit box. Sabelski nearly 30. So I'm almost starting to wonder if maybe Sabelski had trouble down on pit lane, because now as Logan and Sukup comes down and do their pit stops, it doesn't look like any of these drivers are spending anywhere near as much time down there as Sabelski did. So that's going to put Morelli on pit lane and McRae on pit lane. Logan going to be taking 2 tires, and looks like Morelli may have left his pit box earlier than he intended. Sure enough, as Logan and Sukup both leave, it does look like Morelli. Something has gone wrong for the 007 down on pit lane, but he's got it going again. That was a very, very costly pit stop for that 007 driver, but he's got it back out on the speedway one way or another. Just not quite sure what happened to him to cause him to mess up that pit stop so badly. Now that things have cycled out, though, Tyler McRae back to leading this race in that Sim Speed Shop entry. 62 laps in the books, a little bit under 30 to go, and now this field is completely spread out. Let's break out the wide view camera here. You can see just how far apart some of these drivers are around this speedway. Closest battle is an entire nearly 3 seconds between these cars, and then another 10. So unless a caution is to come out, it looks like most of these drivers are going to be bringing it home in the positions they are at. They're at. Of course, that also depends on how well they can manage their tires. In these next 35 laps, it is entirely possible that someone is going to push their car harder than it is able to go, and they mess up their tires. But we will just have to see how it plays out, because McRae, Rex, Sukup, all drivers that have a whole lot of experience under their belt and have shown that tire wear is not something that's going to slow them down all that much. That said, we crossed the line. We put on lap 66. 2/3 of the way through this race. Not a whole lot of time left for these drivers to get themselves sorted out. Steven Rex back in P number 2 in that 10 machine, then Travis Sukup all the way back on the backstretch a bit by himself. Then Brian Sabelski in the 85, the last car on the lead lap. So his pit strategy, as strange as it was, spending so much more time down on pit lane than anyone else on the speedway, he is still on the lead lap despite it all. Looking at the lap times, it does not look like Sabelski is doing much to catch up, though. 0.2 of a second slower than any of our top 3 drivers pretty much every lap, it looks like. Sabelski there getting around that lap traffic of the 007 of Nico Morelli. Morelli currently being scored 2 laps down after having that bit of difficulty back on pit road. He did end up spending a full minute on pit road, which definitely a very costly place to be when drivers are setting 20-second lap times around this speedway. But not the last car in the race, so still have something going for him. Of course, Mauro and Feeney retired from the event already, so they're going to be scoring back in 7th and 8th no matter what, but the rest of the field is still up for grabs. Of course, it would take a very big stroke of luck for Morelli or Logan to get back up on the lead lap, but technically speaking, it's not impossible, especially since caution laps don't count here this evening. That said, with how spread out everyone is, it would take someone making a pretty big mistake and having a pretty massive screw up to bring out a yellow flag this late into the race, I think. There's pretty much no way it's going to happen unless someone self-spins. So for now, McRae driving his way around this speedway at a comfortable pace, looking to just try and bring home the 2nd win of the season for that number 11 car and start thinking about next week and what he's going to do to get the championship lead taken away from Travis Sukup back there in position number 3. And 25 laps to go, officially bringing in the closing chapters of tonight's event. Not a whole lot of race left to be decided. That said, Steven Rex is actually gaining ground on Tyler McRae. Slowly but surely, he has closed that gap down from about 5 seconds to 2.8, and he's still gaining every single lap, so things may not be as easy for McRae as we first thought. That said, it's a big question of, will Rex actually be able to make that ground up in these next 23 laps, because he's only making a couple of thousandths of a second up each lap, and a scrape against the wall like that is not helping his case. Let's actually take a minute to ride on board with the driver of that number 10 and get an idea of just what he is seeing down there in the cockpit of that number 10 machine. listening on board. That number 10 machine, he's really pushing it with everything he's got to try and get up to our race leader here this evening, and potentially trying a little bit harder than he needs to, because he is scraping that outside wall on corner exit pretty much every single lap there. And on top of that, you could see him get loose off the corner a couple of times, so he is really pushing this car, and you can see the gap between himself and McRae has widened, so he's potentially done a little bit more harm than good with those wall impacts, just pushing the car so hard to try and catch back up to his teammate. Of course, back in P number 3, Travis Sukup also falling behind a bit. Might have had short run speed, but it does not look like either of these two drivers have the longer run necessary to catch up to that 11 of Tyler McRae. That said, their lap time's still incredibly comparable. Tyler McRae set a 21.84, Rex a 21.87, and Sukup, as he crosses the line here, going to be setting a 21.9. So less than a tenth of a second between all of these drivers, and Nico Morelli going to be coming back down pit lane in that 007 machine. Locking up the front tires a little bit to get it to stop, but he's got it back down there. It looks like he's going to be putting on tires, which I could have swore he did already on his initial pit stop, but I guess not. That's going to be Morelli putting on 2 tires, and as he comes back out on the speedway, he's actually going to be battling for position with that 24 of Corey Logan. Both these drivers being scored 4 laps down, so both of them will be battling it out for the final spot in the top 5. Both these drivers have damage on their cars, but it does look like Morelli does have the newer tires on there, so he will have a little bit of an advantage over that 24, but still side by side going down into turn number 3. Morelli almost all the way down on the very bottom of the apron. And again, side by side all the way through that lap. Again, Morelli all the way down, all the way off the asphalt and into that stuff that is going to be making his car all sorts of unstable. He pulls it down again to let these lead lap cars by, but now that Sabelski and McRae are around, they're going to go straight back to battling, and now both drivers being scored 5 laps down, but that's not going to stop them from battling it out and trying to pull something out of this race. Even if it is for the 5th position, a battle is a battle. And with that 11 of McRae, that's the race leader, and Sabelski trying to keep himself from being lapped, things are getting pretty spicy here. 10 laps to go, though. Not a whole lot of time left for these drivers to get themselves sorted out. It does look like Corey Logan is falling back a bit in that number 24 machine. So now we find ourselves with 3 cars all battling it out that are all on different laps. So they are not actually fighting for position here. But sometimes, especially in some of these longer races, it's fun just to battle for the sake of battling, even if it isn't necessarily going to be affecting the outcome of the race here. Morelli pushing that car just to see what sort of speed he can get out of it in that 007. Last time by, set a 21.91, which is actually almost on par with the lap times that our race leader is setting. He only set a 21.88 last time by, so 0.03 of a second between the driver back in P number 5 and the race leader here tonight. 7 laps to go, though. If a caution were to come out, Sabelski would be put back on the lead lap, so that would give us 4 drivers battling it out for the win. But I don't think that that is going to happen unless something goes catastrophically wrong for one of these drivers in these next couple of laps. That said, it is getting pretty dark out there over the speedway. Maybe iRacing secretly added rain and didn't tell anyone. That would be pretty unfortunate to have the race be red flagged for rain in the last 5 laps, but sometimes we just have strange occurrences like that out here on the speedway, but I don't think it's that big of an issue. I think it's just conveniently very overcast. And still, these two drivers are duking it out like they're on the same lap, and they're not. But they're having fun out there on the speedway, and sometimes that is half the battle here this evening. Four laps left to go. Gonna be making it 3 to go as McRae crosses the line, and he has no competition to be worrying himself with. All he has to do is make about 6 more corners without any sort of complications, and he'll be taking home the checkered flag. Of course, again, we have seen stranger things happen here in this series. We have seen drivers self-spin with 1 to go from the lead with as much of a gap as McRae has right now. So I'm trying my best here not to give him the commentator's curse. I'm just saying it is entirely possible that something could go wrong. That said, either way, it doesn't really matter as McRae crosses the line and the white flag goes up in the air. The next flag's going to end the race one way or another. Coming out of turn number 2, not a single issue for the driver of the number 11. And as he goes through 3 and 4 and comes across the line, Tyler McRae going to take home the win here this evening in that number 11 machine with almost a 3.5 second gap to anyone else on the field. So a very dominant display by the driver of the number 11 machine. We're going to give him just a second to do a little bit of celebrating. Should he be one to give us a burnout, he may not do it. He might, though. The question is, will he at least consider it? He had to think about it for a second, but he is going to do it now. So, a big congratulations to Tyler McRae for taking home his second win of the season here at the Thompson Speedway up in Connecticut. There we go. Now he's got a little bit of a burnout going in that number 11 machine. But race fans, don't go anywhere. We will be right back in just a moment with interviews with your top 3 finishers here tonight and get a little bit of insight into what these drivers were thinking going through these last 100 laps. So don't go anywhere, race fans, and we will be back in just a moment. All right, race fans, welcome back to Round number six, season 9 of the ASRC Oval Series just got 100 laps done here at the Thompson Speedway, and up here with me is the 11 of Mr. Tyler McRae, bringing home his second win of the season. How are you doing it now that everything's said and done here tonight?
I'm doing good, thank you. It's fun racing with my buddies out there and putting a beating on Mike. Can't have a better day.
Well, I admire the enthusiasm on beating your teammates. I'm not sure what exactly the point standings are coming into tonight's event, but I know that you and Sukup have been pretty much nose to tail in the points all season this season. So a win under your belt, definitely a great thing to have. And with how drop weeks play out, you might potentially be the championship leader now. I'm not quite sure, but either way, you've just made the championship battle even tighter than it was before. How are you feeling next week heading into Irwindale for round number 7?
Oh, feeling fine. I mean, I like the harder tracks. It makes it more challenging. Just like tonight, I share two different setups. They're not all going to be the same for the other drivers, but I'm trying to help them get more competitive too. Some of them already are; they're really close, but some of them aren't as close. So we're trying to really help them out. Hopefully, in the future, maybe they need to personalize the setup for them. Maybe they'll ask for help. I'm not sure, but I'll be willing to help. Mike is too, and so is Steve if anybody needs it. Hopefully, we can keep building this league. The ASRC is a pretty good setup and good guys in it. So, want to continue building it.
Yeah, well, it's always great to have drivers out there willing to lend a hand to everyone else because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is about having fun and helping each other improve as drivers. So it's always good to be keeping that in mind as we compete for another title this season. But either way, the Drop and Robs Racing team, you all put on a heck of a show here tonight. I'm pretty sure you led quite literally every lap except for maybe one or two during the pit cycle. So, a very good run by you here tonight and a very good run by everyone for DVR. Of course, before I let you go and celebrate getting another win under your belt here this evening, anyone you want to thank on the side of that number 11 for getting you up here?
Oh, definitely. The ASRC League, putting on this fun time and your broadcast and the dropping bombs guys. They keep me laughing, and I try to lie to them. They don't let me get away with it, so it's a good time. And also, don't want to forget simspeedshop.com with all the little iRacing gadgets.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, Tyler, and I look forward to seeing you next week at Irwindale.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And coming back in P number 2, another Mr. Potato Head, the driver out of Channahon, Illinois. It's the 10 of Steven Rex. You're up here in P number 2 yet again. How are you feeling now that you got another race under your belt?
Yeah, I'm getting more comfortable. I need to get into the room earlier. I build majority of the setups and share them with Tyler and Mike, and they come in here and run them for 40 minutes before I get in and beat me every time. So I gotta start coming in earlier.
Well, I reckon there's always something you can do to get the edge up on another driver, and if you feel that's what you gotta do, then that's what you gotta do, and hopefully it works out for you. I would definitely love to be seeing you up here taking home a trophy at some point this season. That said,
Yeah.
you saw how this race played out. What do you think might have had to have gone differently for you to have taken that lead away from Tyler McRae?
You know what? He told me he made one change and he actually made a different one. He showed me his setup after the race, so I wanted to kick him in the butt a little bit, but that's what I needed. Or I needed a caution, one of the two.
Fair enough. Sometimes the race just doesn't play out how you need it to, but that's part of what makes it so exciting. There's always a little bit of an element of chaos out there. Next week, though, we're heading to the Irwindale Speedway. How you feeling about going to another outside line track?
Yeah, we'll run pretty good there. Ran there many a times. Got a decent setup under the ride, so I'll be ready.
That sounds like a good plan. I look forward to seeing you there then. Of course, before I send you off for the evening there, the microphone's all yours. Anyone you like thank for getting that number 10 machine up here in Victory Lane?
Yeah, I like to put on everybody that puts on the ASRC, the race itself, and then you for your broadcast. All the guys in here, it's fun running with them. Very respectful. Um, we've been a little bit faster than some of the other guys, and like I said, they're very respectful and move out of the way a little bit when we're racing up front. So I thank them for that. And then the guys over at DBR, it's always fun working with them guys, even though they keep cheating. It's okay, we'll get them.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you beating those gosh darn cheaters next week.
Amen. Talk to you later.
Alrighty, and bringing up the tail of the podium here tonight, your win streak has finally been broken, and we didn't even have to put a bounty on your head. But you're still up here talking to me. You still got another podium under your belt. How are you feeling this evening, Mr. Sukup?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Nice to see Tyler win today. He was racing to raise awareness for male pattern baldness.
Well, always good to have a cause out there while you're racing, and definitely a very great display by everyone from the DBR racing team. So congratulations all of y'all for getting up here. Next week, like I said, we are heading to the Irwindale Speedway, a track that is maybe a little bit like Thompson, but also a little bit not. How you feeling heading to the West Coast next week?
Oh, it sounds good to me. Either way.
Fair enough. He says either way is fine. Doesn't look like we have too much left in the form of weird tracks throughout the season, so I like the confidence. I like that you're ready for next week. But before I let you go and get yourself all prepped up for it, anyone you want to thank on the side of that 145 for getting you up here?
Oh, it's good to be in the league. The league is a lot of fun. We've had a good time with it. And basically the same that we run with the DBR guys. We just get together and have a good time. So I guess to thank those guys. And I guess I was running another one of Steve's setup, so that worked out pretty good.
Good deal. Well, as always, I thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you competing next week.
All right, thank you. We'll see you then. Thank you for what you do.
And you heard it here first, race fans, talking to your top 3 finishers here this evening. Of course, that's just about all we got from the ASRC Oval Series here tonight. But before we sign off for the evening, I'm going to take a quick look down at our race results for the evening. Taking home the win for the second time this season, gonna be the 11 of Mr. Tyler McRae for dropping bombs, followed by his teammates of Steven Rex and Travis Sukup rounding out the podium here tonight. Back in P number 4, that's going to be the 85 of Brian Sabelski, with Nico Morelli in the 007 rounding out the top 5 here this evening. Back in P number 6, that's going to be the 27 of Corey Logan, with the 7th place going back to the 8 of Jeremy Mauro. Finally, rounding out field here tonight, the driver that was unable to attend tonight's event. He did not make the call to the field. That's going to be the 38 of Brandon Feeney. But for now, that's all we got here at the Thompson Speedway for you. Like I said, next week, same day, same time, Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern, we will be heading on over to the Irwindale Speedway over in sunny California. So should be quite a fun race to watch. Irwindale Speedway is where this broadcast began, so it'll be nice to take a little bit of a trip back there and relive a little bit of nostalgia. But for now, that's all we got for this evening. Thank you all for coming out, and as always, have a good evening, race fans.